You know what's absolutely wild? Right now, as you're watching this video, there are millions of people around the world who are sitting in complete silence, heart racing, palms sweating, chest tight, convinced that something terrible is about to happen. And here's the thing that nobody tells you: nothing is actually happening. They're safe, they're okay. But their mind is screaming danger at full volume. I used to be one of those people. I would lie awake at 3 in the morning, my mind racing through every possible catastrophe that could happen tomorrow, next week, next year. My body would be exhausted, but my brain refused to shut off. And then one day someone told me something so simple, so obvious, that it actually made me angry at first. But once I truly understood it, once I actually implemented this single mental shift, everything changed. My anxiety didn't just get better, it fundamentally transformed. And I'm going to share that exact shift with you right now, but I need you to really listen, because your first instinct is going to be to dismiss this as too simple. That's what I did, and it cost me years of unnecessary suffering. So let's dive in, because what I'm about to tell you has the potential to completely change your relationship with anxiety forever. Let's start with what anxiety actually is, because most people have this completely backwards. We think anxiety is the problem. We think anxiety is this terrible thing that attacks us, that we need to fight against, that we need to eliminate from our lives completely. And that right there, that belief, that's actually what keeps you stuck in the anxiety loop forever. Because here's what nobody tells you about anxiety. It's not your enemy. It never was. Anxiety is actually your brain's protection system working exactly as it's designed to work. Think about it like this. Imagine you're walking through the woods and you see what looks like a snake on the path. Your body instantly floods with adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing gets shallow. Your muscles tense up. All of this happens before you even have a conscious thought about it. That's anxiety. That's your survival mechanism kicking in to protect you. And here's the beautiful part. It doesn't matter if that thing on the path is actually a snake or just a stick. Your brain sees a potential threat, and it responds immediately to keep you safe. This is a feature, not a bug. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do over millions of years. The problem isn't that you have anxiety. The problem is what you do when anxiety shows up. Most people, when they feel anxiety rising, they immediately go into battle mode. They try to push it away. They try to suppress it. They tell themselves they shouldn't be feeling this way. They judge themselves for being anxious. They think there's something wrong with them because they can't just relax like everyone else seems to. And every single one of those responses sends a message back to your brain that says, this feeling is dangerous, this feeling is a threat. We need to be afraid of being afraid. And that's when you get caught in what I call the anxiety spiral. You feel anxious, which makes you anxious about being anxious, which makes you more anxious, which makes you terrified that you'll always feel this way, which creates even more anxiety. It's like quicksand. The harder you fight, the deeper you sink. And this can go on for years, decades even. I've talked to people who have been caught in this loop for their entire adult lives, convinced that they just have an anxiety disorder, that they're broken, that they'll never be free of this feeling. But here's the mental shift that changes everything. Are you ready? Here it is. Anxiety is not happening to you. Anxiety is happening for you. Read that again. Let it actually sink in. Anxiety is not something attacking you. It's not a malfunction. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. Anxiety is your body trying to protect you. It's information. It's a messenger. And the moment you stop treating anxiety as the enemy and start treating it as information, everything changes. Because when you're at war with your anxiety, you're literally at war with yourself. You're telling your own protective system that it's wrong, that it's bad, that it needs to go away. And your nervous system hears that and thinks, okay, if this person is rejecting their own protective response, they must be in even more danger than I thought. Better amp up the anxiety even more. But when you shift your perspective and start seeing anxiety as information, as a messenger trying to tell you something, suddenly you're not fighting anymore. You're listening. You're curious. You're working with your body instead of against it. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds great in theory, but how do I actually do this when I'm in the middle of a panic attack? How do I shift my perspective when my heart is pounding and I can't breathe and I'm convinced I'm dying? Great question. And this is where it gets practical. When anxiety shows up, instead of immediately trying to make it go away, Instead of judging yourself for feeling it, instead of spiraling into catastrophic thinking, you pause, just for a second, and you get curious. You say to yourself, okay, anxiety is here. What is it trying to tell me? What does it think I need to be protected from right now? And here's what's fascinating. When you actually ask that question with genuine curiosity instead of fear, when you approach your anxiety with kindness instead of hostility, something shifts in your nervous system, because you're no longer sending the signal that the anxiety itself is dangerous. You're acknowledging it, you're thanking it for trying to protect you, and you're letting your body know that you've got this, that you're safe, that you can handle whatever comes. Let me give you a concrete example from my own life. I used to get terrible anxiety before public speaking. My hands would shake, my voice would crack. I would spend days beforehand obsessing over everything that could go wrong. And the more I tried to calm down, the more anxious I became. Then I learned this mental shift. The next time I had to give a presentation, when that familiar wave of anxiety started rising, instead of thinking, oh no, not again, why can't I just be normal? I stopped and I said, anxiety, I see you. Thank you for trying to protect me. You're worried that I'm going to embarrass myself up there. You're trying to keep me safe, I appreciate that. And then here's the key part. I said, and I've got this. I've prepared. I know this material. Even if I mess up, I'll be okay. I'm safe. And something incredible happened. The anxiety didn't disappear completely, but it shifted. It went from this overwhelming panic to just a normal level of alertness, like the kind of energy you need to perform well. My hands still had a little tremor, but instead of seeing that as proof that I was going to fail, I saw it as my body giving me energy and focus. And that presentation ended up being one of my best ones. This is the power of the mental shift. You're not trying to eliminate anxiety. You're not trying to become some Zen master who never feels stressed or worried. You're simply changing your relationship with anxiety. You're moving from resistance to acceptance, from fighting to allowing, from fear to curiosity. And when you do that, anxiety stops being this big scary monster that controls your life and becomes just another sensation, another piece of information, another part of your human experience. Because here's the truth that took me way too long to learn. The goal is not to never feel anxious. The goal is to not be afraid of feeling anxious. Let me say that again because it's so important. The goal is not to never feel anxious. The goal is to not be afraid of feeling anxious. Think about physical pain for a second. When you touch a hot stove, you feel pain. That pain is information telling you to move your hand. You don't judge yourself for feeling pain. You don't think there's something wrong with you because pain exists. You acknowledge the pain, you understand what it's telling you, and you respond appropriately. Anxiety works the same way. It's your emotional pain system. It's telling you that your brain perceives some kind of threat. That threat might be real or it might be imagined. But either way, the anxiety itself is just information. The problem is that we've been taught to treat emotional pain completely differently than physical pain. We've been taught that we should always be happy, always be calm, always be positive. And when we're not, when we feel anxiety or sadness or anger, we think something has gone terribly wrong. We think we need to fix it immediately. We reach for medication, for alcohol, for distraction, for anything that will make the feeling go away. And look, I'm not saying those things don't have their place. Sometimes medication is absolutely necessary. Sometimes you need a break from the intensity. But if your only strategy is to make anxiety disappear, you're going to be fighting a losing battle for the rest of your life. Because here's what I've learned from years of my own experience and from talking to countless other people who have struggled with anxiety. The people who finally break free aren't the ones who figure out how to never feel anxious. They're the ones who stop being afraid of their anxiety. They're the ones who can feel their heart racing and think, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I'm safe. They're the ones who can have anxious thoughts without believing every single one of them. They're the ones who have learned to coexist with anxiety instead of constantly being at war with it. And that mental shift, that fundamental change in perspective, that's what creates lasting peace. Not the absence of anxiety, but a different relationship with it. Now let's talk about why this mental shift is so hard for most people to make. Because if it was easy, everyone would have figured this out already. The reason it's hard is because anxiety is designed to feel urgent. When anxiety shows up, it doesn't feel like information. It feels like an emergency. Your body is literally in fight or flight mode. Your brain is screaming that something is wrong and you need to fix it right now. And in that state, the last thing you want to do is pause and get curious. You want to escape. You want relief. You want the feeling to stop. This is completely normal and completely understandable. The fight or flight response bypasses your rational thinking brain. It's supposed to. If you actually encountered a lion, you wouldn't want to stop and analyze your feelings. You'd want to run. The problem is that modern anxiety is usually triggered by things that aren't actual physical threats. You're not running from a lion. You're worried about a work presentation. You're anxious about a social situation. You're stressed about money or health or relationships. These are real concerns, but they're not immediate physical dangers. Yet your body responds as if they are. So the mental shift requires you to interrupt that automatic response. It requires you to notice when your body is in fight or flight mode and gently remind yourself that you're actually safe in this moment. Not that your concerns aren't valid, not that you don't have real problems to deal with, but that right now in this present moment, you're physically safe. And when you can do that, when you can acknowledge the anxiety while also acknowledging your safety, something remarkable happens. Your nervous system starts to calm down, not because you forced it to, not because you pushed the anxiety away, but because you sent your body the signal that it can relax, that the emergency response isn't needed right now. And over time, as you practice this mental shift more and more, your baseline anxiety level starts to decrease. Your body learns that it doesn't need to be on high alert all the time. Your brain learns that anxiety isn't a threat in itself, and you start to experience more moments of genuine calm and peace. Let me give you another practical tool that goes hand in hand with this mental shift. It's something I call the anxiety conversation. When you feel anxiety rising, instead of trying to ignore it or fight it, you literally have a conversation with it in your mind. I know this might sound weird at first, but stay with me. You say something like, "Hey anxiety, I notice you're here. What's going on? What are you worried about?" And then you listen. Not to the catastrophic stories your mind wants to spin, but to the core concern underneath. Maybe your anxiety says, "I'm worried you're going to fail at this new project." Okay, that's information. Is that concern based on anything real? Have you actually not prepared enough? Or is this just your brain's way of trying to protect you from potential embarrassment? Maybe your anxiety says, "I'm worried about your health." Okay, is there something specific you need to address? Or is this generalized health anxiety that isn't based on any actual symptoms or medical concerns? The point is that you're treating your anxiety like a worried friend who cares about you, but might be a little overprotective. You don't tell that friend to shut up and go away. You listen to their concerns, you acknowledge them, and then you provide reassurance based on reality. This might sound like this. "Anxiety, I hear you. You're worried I'm going to fail at this project. Thank you for caring about my success. I've actually prepared quite a bit for this. I have a plan. I have the skills I need. Even if some things don't go perfectly, I have the ability to problem solve and adjust. I've handled challenging situations before and I can handle this one too. I'm okay. We're safe." And then you might feel your body relax a little bit. You might take a deeper breath. You might notice that the anxiety is still there, but it's not quite as intense. That's the shift happening in real time. You're retraining your nervous system to recognize that anxiety is just information, not a threat. You're building trust with yourself. You're proving to your body that you can handle difficult feelings without falling apart. And that trust, that confidence in your own resilience, that's what ultimately creates lasting freedom from chronic anxiety. Now, I want to address something important. This mental shift doesn't mean you ignore your anxiety or pretend everything is fine when it's not. If your anxiety is telling you something important, if there's actually a problem you need to address, then you address it. If you're anxious about money because you're genuinely not managing your finances well, then the solution isn't just to calm yourself down, it's to take action on your finances. If you're anxious in a relationship because there are real issues that need to be discussed, then the solution is to have those difficult conversations. Anxiety often points us toward things in our life that need attention. The mental shift is about not being controlled by the anxiety while you address those things. It's about being able to think clearly and take effective action instead of being paralyzed by fear or making decisions from a place of panic. There's a huge difference between anxious action and empowered action. Anxious action is when you do something just to make the feeling go away. You quit your job because you're anxious about it, without having another plan. You avoid social situations because they make you uncomfortable. You constantly seek reassurance from others because you can't tolerate the uncertainty. Empowered action is when you acknowledge the anxiety, understand what it's pointing to, and then make a thoughtful decision about how to respond. You might still quit your job, but you do it as part of a larger plan that you've thought through. You might still skip certain social situations, but it's a conscious choice based on your values, not avoidance driven by fear. The mental shift I'm talking about gives you access to empowered action, because when you're not afraid of your anxiety, when you can feel it without being controlled by it, you have so much more freedom to make choices that actually serve you. And here's another crucial part of this mental shift. Your anxiety is not telling you facts about reality. It's telling you about what your brain perceives as potential threats, and your brain, bless it, has a negativity bias. It's wired to focus on what could go wrong because that's what kept our ancestors alive. The person who assumed every rustle in the bushes was a predator lived longer than the person who was overly optimistic. But in modern life, this negativity bias causes a lot of unnecessary suffering. Your brain will spin out worst-case scenarios, not because those scenarios are likely, but because it's doing what it evolved to do, which is protect you from potential danger. So when an anxious thought pops up, something like what if I have a heart attack, or what if everyone thinks I'm stupid, or what if I never feel happy again, you don't have to believe that thought just because your brain produced it. You can notice it, acknowledge it as your brain trying to protect you, and then you can check it against reality. Is there any actual evidence that you're having a heart attack right now? Or is this anxiety producing physical sensations that your brain is misinterpreting? When you separate anxious thoughts from reality, when you recognize that your brain is just doing its threat detection thing, and that doesn't mean its predictions are accurate, you take away so much of anxiety's power. Let me share one more story to illustrate this. I used to have really bad social anxiety. Walking into a party or networking event would make my heart race. I'd rehearse conversations in my head. I'd worry about saying something stupid. I'd leave early because I couldn't handle the discomfort. And the more I avoided social situations, the worse my anxiety got. Then I started applying this mental shift. Before an event, when anxiety would show up, I'd acknowledge it. I'd say, okay, anxiety, I know you're worried I'm going to embarrass myself. You're trying to keep me safe. Thank you. And then I'd remind myself that I'm actually pretty good at conversations when I relax. That people generally like me. That even if I say something awkward, it's not the end of the world. I'd go to the event while feeling anxious, not waiting for the anxiety to go away first. And here's what happened. The first few events were still uncomfortable, but I noticed that the anxiety would peak in the first few minutes and then naturally decrease as I got engaged in conversations. I noticed that my worst fears never materialized, and over time the anticipatory anxiety decreased. My brain learned that social situations weren't actually dangerous. I still sometimes feel nervous at events, but it doesn't control me anymore. So let me summarize this mental shift that transforms your relationship with anxiety. Stop treating anxiety as your enemy. Stop trying to eliminate it. Stop judging yourself for feeling it. Instead, recognize anxiety for what it really is, your brain's protective mechanism trying to keep you safe. Thank it for trying to protect you. Get curious about what it's trying to tell you, and then reassure yourself that you're actually safe in this moment. Take action on real problems if needed, but don't let anxiety make your decisions. Be willing to feel uncomfortable while you do what matters to you. Build your confidence in your ability to handle difficult feelings, and watch as anxiety transforms from this terrifying monster into just another part of your human experience, something you can acknowledge and work with, rather than something that controls your entire life. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. It's about fundamentally changing how you relate to your own internal experience. It's about moving from resistance to acceptance, from fighting to allowing, from fear to curiosity. And when you make that shift, everything changes. Not overnight, not perfectly, but genuinely and sustainably. That's the shift. That's the secret. And it's available to you anytime you choose to practice it. So the next time you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, that racing mind, that sense of unease, instead of trying to fight it or fix it or make it go away, try this. Pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what is this anxiety trying to teach me? What am I clinging to? What am I resisting? What impermanence am I denying? And in that moment of inquiry, you might just touch the same truth that the Buddha discovered under that Bodhi tree all those years ago, the truth that sets you free.